ceasefire agreement has been reached between Israel and Lebanon, ending one of the two main fronts of the Israel-Hamas war. What does the deal include? What mechanisms are put in place, and how will this affect the situation in the Gaza Strip? I'm Alon Burstein. Let's dive in. On November 26th, Israel and Lebanon both agreed to a de-escalation framework, culminating in the complete ceasefire and IDF withdrawal from Lebanon. The complete terms of the deal have not yet been made public. However, from what has been published, we can learn that the deal includes many different facets. This includes an IDF gradual withdrawal from southern Lebanon and the Lebanese military deploying in the area, the enforcement of UN Security Council Resolution 1701 back from 2006, international mechanisms aimed at ensuring that both sides live up to their agreements, and mechanisms put into place to ensure that Hezbollah cannot rearm itself in Lebanon. The deal also leaves some things explicitly vague or open to interpretation, chief among them the terms in which the IDF is authorized to use force in Lebanon if the deal is violated. So with that, let's unpack what has been published about the deal that is aimed at ending one of the two main fronts of the Israel-Hamas war. Starting with the timeline, the ceasefire entered into effect on November 27th at 4 a.m. local time in the Middle East. However, with that, I'll say that historical trends of ceasefires in the Middle East suggest that we may see a final rocket or two being fired in the next 12 to 24 hours after the ceasefire has taken effect. The ceasefire includes Hezbollah and all other armed groups in Lebanon carrying out no offensive actions against Israel, and the IDF in turn stopping all offensive military activities in Lebanon. From the moment that the ceasefire went into effect, a 60-day transition period is going to begin, during which time the IDF is going to gradually withdraw from southern Lebanon and redeploy itself in key positions in the area. The Lebanese military is, during that time period, going to deploy 1,000 soldiers throughout southern Lebanon as the IDF withdraws, and backed by the UNIFIL peacekeeping mission, the Lebanese military is going to begin the implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701. The resolution, which ended the escalation between Israel and Hezbollah in 2006, calls for the complete dismantling of all Hezbollah infrastructure, weaponry, and military bases south of the Litani River. This is the area in southern Lebanon that is close to the northern border of Israel, and ensuring that the Lebanese military is the only armed presence in southern Lebanon. Israel has agreed that the Lebanese military be armed by quote-unquote Western countries in order to fulfill its role in the implementation of this deal. According to reports, France also may send troops to facilitate the Lebanese military's operations as it tries to dismantle Hezbollah's military presence in southern Lebanon. After the 60-day transition period, the IDF will complete its withdrawal from Lebanon, and the Lebanese military will take up full positions in the region, securing the southern border with Israel, as well as taking up other positions along the Lebanese borders. After the 60-day transition period, the IDF will complete its withdrawal from Lebanon and withdraw to what is called the Blue Line, that is the border between the countries. The Lebanese military will then take up full positions in the region. In addition to that, the Lebanese government is also going to assume full responsibility for all weapons manufacturing and production in the country, i.e. that section of the deal says that the Lebanese government is responsible for dismantling all of Hezbollah's weapon manufacturing capabilities. The Lebanese military is also going to deploy across all of Lebanon's borders. Primarily, this relates to the border between Lebanon and Syria in order to stop Hezbollah from rearming itself. As part of the deal and to ensure compliance of both sides, an international monitoring mechanism is also going to be established. This mechanism, that is headed by the United States, is going to include the United Kingdom, Germany, and France. It's important to note that both sides tried to veto different actors. Hezbollah initially vetoed the participation of Germany and the United Kingdom in this international mechanism. Lebanon initially demanded the presence of another Arab country in the mechanism as well. And Israel initially also vetoed France's participation in the mechanism due to the country's announcements that it is going to enforce the ICC arrest warrants that have been issued for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and former Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. In the end, this is the composition of the mechanism that was agreed to. It seems that each side agreed to compromise and all of them let go of their vetoes. It was not published if anything else was promised to the different parties when it comes to the participation of the different countries. The aim of this international mechanism is to ensure that both sides live up to their obligations, but more importantly, it is to have a place for each side to lodge its grievances and allow the other one to rectify the grievances in order to stop a military escalation. For example, if Israel identifies that Hezbollah is arming itself south of the Litani River, Israel is then supposed to file a complaint with the mechanism, which will then grant the Lebanese army time to address Israel's grievance before Israel takes action. Through this, the international community is hoping to allow for a process of trust building between Israel and Lebanon rather than one side seeing that the other side has violated the agreement or possibly just not live up to the agreement the way each side wants, which will lead to a very quick escalation between the sides. Other facets of the deal are that both sides publicly recognize their commitment to UN Security Council Resolution 1701. Again, the important parts of that resolution are that there be no other military presence other than the Lebanese army south of the Litani River, and that the borders between the two countries are respected. In addition, it is also included in the deal that there be indirect negotiations between the sides under the auspices of the United States aimed at resolving all border disputes between Israel and Lebanon. Now, in addition to this ceasefire, the deal was only facilitated after Israel received an additional letter of guarantee from the United States. It's important to clarify that this is not part of the agreement between Israel and Lebanon itself. Rather, it is seen as somewhat of a quote-unquote side deal between Israel and the U.S. In this letter of guarantee, Israel and the U.S. declare their intent to share sensitive intelligence information regarding Hezbollah. However, according to what has been published, within that agreement, the United States is also allowed to share that information with the Lebanese government or the International Monitoring Mechanism in order to allow for the grievances to be dealt with. In addition, the United States also commits to cooperating with Israel in order to stop weapons smuggling from Iran and other parts of the Middle East into Lebanon. This very likely means the United States is going to take more of an active role in stopping the weapons smugglings from Iran or Iraq going through Syria. The most important item of this additional agreement, however, at least as far as Israel is concerned, relates to the United States recognizing Israel's right to use force, i.e. to activate the IDF in Lebanon, in the event of a quote-unquote immediate threat. If the threat is not considered immediate, then Israel is supposed to lodge its complaint through the official channels of the international mechanism. However, Israel is granted the right to activate the IDF and use force in order to neutralize or stop an immediate threat. The deal also relates to Israel operating intelligence flyovers in Lebanese airspace. However, it is not explicit how many flyovers or if this pertains to all Lebanon or only to southern Lebanon. Now, in a moment of analysis with regards to this deal, I'm also going to say that there are several things that are either left deliberately vague or simply not addressed in this ceasefire agreement, some of which should concern both Israel and Lebanon. First, while the agreement does explicitly prohibit the armed presence of any actor south of the Litani River other than the Lebanese military, it does not explicitly forbid Hezbollah activity in southern Lebanon if that activity does not involve weaponry or is not armed. In other words, the UN Security Council Resolution 1701 does say that Hezbollah cannot have military activity or weaponry in southern Lebanon. However, Hezbollah itself can still operate all of its other activities in the region. This may end up having serious repercussions for southern Lebanon. After the escalations of 2006, in which the IDF invaded southern Lebanon the last time prior to the Israel-Hamas War, Hezbollah was the main entity that operated in southern Lebanon in order to rebuild the region. The Lebanese military and the Lebanese government had a lot less of a presence there. That is, in fact, one of the things that really helped Hezbollah gain substantial foothold in the local population and become sort of the state within a state that it was operating in southern Lebanon. Today, Hassan Fadlallah, who is one of Hezbollah's leading parliamentarians in Lebanon, alluded to Hezbollah's plans when it comes to rebuilding southern Lebanon, stating that Hezbollah's mechanisms that are in charge of society and health stand ready to facilitate once the ceasefire is declared, and he explicitly stated that Hezbollah is prepared to help in the returning of displaced civilians from southern Lebanon to their homes and to rebuild the area. Again, such acts unto themselves do not violate the agreement, which may end up being a serious source of concern for Israel, as Hezbollah may start rebuilding its infrastructure in the area, simply not building it in an explicitly military way, which may end up leading to interpretations, is this violating the agreement or not? On the other hand, Lebanon should likely be concerned that in the side agreement between Israel and the United States, there is no definition for what constitutes a quote-unquote immediate threat to Israel. It is likely that this was deliberately left vague. However, we should consider that the concept of immediate threat can be open to vast interpretation. For example, while it may be clear that a unit preparing to fire a rocket at Israel should be considered an immediate threat, questions can be raised if that unit is, for example, smuggling the rocket into southern Lebanon, preparing it for future launching. Is that an immediate threat that Israel can then attack that unit, or is Israel supposed to lodge its complaints with the international mechanism? Similarly, is Israel granted the authority to carry out an airstrike if Hezbollah begins rebuilding an attack tunnel in the areas of southern Lebanon towards Israel? Is this considered an immediate threat? Or is it clear that it's going to take years to build that attack tunnel, and therefore it's not immediate, and Israel should lodge the complaints with the international mechanism? At this point, that's not clear, and should probably be a source of concern for Lebanon. Again, it is very likely that this was left vague on purpose, also considering that there is soon going to be a new U.S. administration in the White House, and the different administration may relate to the entire situation differently. All I'm suggesting, however, is that while the agreement seems to be very detailed when it comes to a lot of different aspects about the implementation, there are also many things that were either not addressed or left deliberately vague, which should be noted also when it comes to how we analyze are both sides living up to the deal and how the deal is interpreted by either side. Now, regarding what the ceasefire means more broadly for the war, I'll start from talking about the Israel-Lebanon front. Israel can likely view this ceasefire as somewhat of a great victory for the country. Hezbollah entered the war a day after the October 7th attack in 2023, and Hassan Nasrallah, the former leader of Hezbollah, continuously vowed that there will be no ceasefire in Lebanon without a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Now, after nearly 2 months of the IDF's invasion of Lebanon, Hassan Nasrallah is dead, and Hezbollah has tacitly accepted a ceasefire that severs the link between Gaza and Lebanon, so to some extent, this can be seen in Israel as somewhat of a victory. At the same time, it's also important to note that the local council leaders in northern Israel are expressing grave concern over this deal, and even Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu did not suggest that Hezbollah has been defeated and is no longer a threat to Israel. In his speech, when he announced the agreement, he actually used the same rhetoric that has been used for 15 years about Hamas. He stated, among others, that the IDF has achieved a great victory, that the movement has been set back for years, that now Israel is going to have a lot more mechanisms to ensure that the movement is no longer a threat to Israel. However, this is also what was said about Hamas in the Gaza Strip for the last 15 years at least, as each time a ceasefire was declared and the movement then rebuilt itself. So, on the one hand, it is very likely that Israel can and probably will present this as a victory. On the other hand, it is also important to note Hezbollah is far from defeated, is already saying that it is going to rebuild, and in that sense, at least in northern Israel, there's actually a lot of concern about this deal. Regarding the implications on the ongoing fighting in the Gaza Strip, U.S. President Biden stated today when he announced the ceasefire that the United States is going to be throwing its weight into restarting the negotiations between Israel and Hamas in an attempt to try to actually bring the sides to a ceasefire as well. Alongside Egypt, he also explicitly mentioned that Qatar and Turkey were also going to be taking part in these negotiations. That is very interesting since Qatar announced that it has withdrawn from negotiations, and there have also been persistent rumors that Hamas leadership would be relocating to Turkey after possibly being expelled from Qatar. Nonetheless, despite the fact that Qatar, Turkey, and Egypt may all be involved in trying to pressure Hamas to come forward towards a deal, it is very unlikely that within Israel or Hamas there's going to be any major changes in the positions that each side has outlined as a result of the ceasefire. It is possible that Hamas may come under slightly more pressure with Hezbollah being taken out of the active fighting. However, broadly, we will likely see that both sides are still going to adhere to those same positions that they had before, while Hamas may come under a little bit more pressure because Hezbollah is now out of the picture, at least in the immediate. For the war, Israel is likely going to face less pressure now that it's not sending more and more active troops to Lebanon and can focus much more on the Palestinian arena. Either way, we're likely going to see negotiations may get restarted, but it is very unlikely that we'll see any progress within them until at least the new administration takes hold in the White House. That is due to happen in January. That is my summary on the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Lebanon. Again, obviously it remains to be seen if both sides adhere to this agreement and how it develops. If you find these reports informative, please do remember to send them on to anyone you think might be interested in developments in the Israel-Hamas war. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you know when reports come out. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'm Alon Burstein. I'm visiting assistant professor and an Israel Institute fellow in the Department of Political Science at Tufts University. Thanks for watching.